Hello,
Okay.
everyone. This is RickDaSquirrel, and we're going to be doing a commentary on Kong Skull Islands. And I'm here with my friend Dave. How are you doing, Dave?
Doing great.
I'm gonna hit play on the movie in three, two, one, go. So it's not starting. Okay, of course it's not starting.
Great start.
All right, now it's starting. Now you can.
There we go.
I've also quieted the movie, so that way hopefully it doesn't get copyright. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it even if it does, what a lot of people do is they basically they'll just upload the audio with like just timestamps on like so
no,
people.
I wasn't going to have the visual audio. I was a visual part. I was going to just have the audio. I just because I did that with the. I was trying to have the Adam Wingard Godzilla vs Kong commentary, just the audio, but it's still blocking it. So I'm just gonna
Oh,
try to see if we can just keep talking over, and hopefully it doesn't notice.
yeah.
Even though this is technically fair use, since we're you know what's the
hmm
I'm having a brain
It's
fart.
transformative.
Yeah.
It's a commentary, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
full. It's a full commentary too.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't remember where you were, because I think I only met you in 2020. So, where were you when all the hype for this movie came out?
Um. Well, I wanted to mention that because I remember it's so funny to think of at the time there was such a level of uncertainty around where Godzilla was going after 2014. There was, we knew a sequel was coming, but you know, everyone there's always that fear of like was it going to be canceled, and then there's rumors going around like oh they have the rights to Kong and they want to do a Kong thing, and it was just um just so many rumors, so many like stories spinning around, so much drama, and then it was such a surprise when they announced the Kong Skull Island trailer. We saw it, and then in the trailer, they're talking about Monarch. Um, oh, in 1954, this, then the third happened, and it was like confirmation that wait a second, this Godzilla thing that Legendary is going on, it has like going. It's going to be something bigger, and that is true. Regardless of what people think of the individual movies, like we have a modern day like set of American monster movies with these iconic characters and stuff, and it kind of really it started with 2014, but like Kong Skull Island made that a reality, and I think that was like what was so cool about like kind of being into this stuff at that time.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was 2014 or 2015 when they announced they were doing a Kong film, and I feel like if they had the ability, they could try to negotiate to get it with Warner Brothers to make a big profit of somewhere where it actually happened. So many people are like, no, it's not gonna happen, and it happened. And
Yeah,
in
well, I don't
2015,
even I don't blame them though because it was kind of like an odd, just like such an out there idea for a lot of people, and plus like the MonsterVerse movies have always done well, but like we live in a time where it seems like companies want $1 billion to try stuff like this.
mm-hmm.
Um, but no, it seems like everything paid off.
Yeah, we'll see as we go forward.
Yeah,
Uh, so
I love these when they do these types of intro sequences with all because they did this for Godzilla and this, and then there's a Kong. I love the flashing of like all these like crazy images and stuff, but also just the music is always great.
yeah, and the little little Easter eggs they hide when they do the little covering up thing with all
Yeah.
the stuff. I missed that with King of the Monsters. They just saved it for the end, and I just didn't like that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's cool it's still there, and it's really cool that it comes back together in Godzilla and Kong, which
Mm-hmm.
probably has like my favorite of them just because of the music, which isn't on the soundtrack for some reason.
Well, a lot of people don't actually like the GTK soundtrack, but I'm just kind of indifferent to it.
I think it's how it. I think it's actually in the movie. It's really good. Just the way they put it together in the actual like score is kind of strange. But like that's just me. I bet a lot of that stuff comes to music. But this movie, speaking of music though, the score for this, I love this theme, and the music in this movie in particular is pretty good all around.
That's funny because a lot of people don't remember the score, but I still remember Khan's theme and Packard's theme a lot. I still have
Yeah,
them in my head.
yeah. Like I know it may not be, but might be like the greatest score ever, but like I think it's still pretty memorable in its own way. It has like it's all about like the mood, and the mood that this score gives is pretty. Um, it kind of cements the feel of this movie, and I think that's like worth a lot.
Yeah,
Oh my god, John Goodman.
he's the one like acclaimed actor for each MonsterVerse movie. They just kill off an acclaimed actor.
That's true.
It's like they get an Oscar or something or some Emmy, and then they just like a year later when the movie that they have comes out, they just die.
Yeah.
Kind of a shame, but not as bad as Bryan Cranston to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, that was at least in that, like at least with this movie, it's like the marketing wasn't around John Goodman. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like in the first with the first film with Bryan Cranston, he was all over the marketing, and I think that's why people were disappointed when he died. It might have been less so if he wasn't.
Yeah, but
Um.
rethinking about that, how would they have used Bryan Cranston if he didn't die? Like, what would he be doing? He'd just be on the sidelines a lot.
Oh yeah, like after you watch it, it is kind of like yeah, like after a while, it just doesn't become that kind of movie anymore. But like once again, this is all beforehand, and we've seen a lot of opinions about Godzilla 2014 since then, and it's like the discussion around it is kind of super interesting, just because it's like it is a movie that's like
Oh, there's a speaking of Godzilla. Look at that.
oh, yeah,
It reminds me of the 1998 boat attack thing where it had similar looking like claw attacks. I was like,
yeah,
man, I'm glad they didn't like really like say Godzilla until like the end of it, like in the end credits scene of this movie, so it wasn't like trying to like force, hey, here's Godzilla. It's not really about
yeah.
Godzilla.
They never like oh Godzilla's in this universe, guys. Just having like they knew that like having uh Monarch there was like cements things enough.
Mm-hmm. I think the director Jordan Vogt Roberts said they had something like that, but he didn't want to have that because he didn't want to take the focus off of Kong.
Which is the right move.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I think of this movie, I don't like. Obviously, it's part of the MonsterVerse, but I don't see it as like, oh, this is like a Godzilla adjacent film. This is a King Kong movie with the, its own take on the King Kong lore and all that. It just so happens to take place in a larger universe of other giant monsters, and I think it really works.
Some people do though, so that's stupid. I kind of wish we get another solo Kong film, but the fact that they were going to have another crossover for the next movie makes me kind of like it's either like they either have to be together so they can get the most money out of it, or have them single-handedly and the chance of like losing money because it isn't like two big iconic characters.
Yeah,
So I feel like
I mean,
we're never gonna get like. My fear is that we're never gonna get like a solo Kong or solo Godzilla MonsterVerse film again.
yeah, I mean, who knows like what the future is for this. I could see them. I think if I had to place bets, I could see them more likely doing a Godzilla solo film, just because he is more so the face of the MonsterVerse, having three movies. Um, I mean, Godzilla vs Kong is shared, but like you know what I mean, right? Like he got a standalone sequel too. That you
See,
know,
it's so weird because everyone like whenever you talk about who do you like more, King Kong or Godzilla, it's always like Godzilla. Whenever you talk to people, or like in the fandom, or like just online, and there's always, of course, going to be those people that like King Kong as well, of course. But it's always like that never really reflects in like the box office a lot because Kong Skull Island still like made the most money.
yeah. I mean, when it comes to how much movies make, there's a lot of factors to consider because like a lot of it also has to do with like timing, what competition was there, like how many people are seeing, I guess, going to the theaters in general. I mean, Godzilla vs Kong might have made quite a bit more than it did if but like it released when COVID restrictions were still pretty high. I mean, I'd still never seen it in theaters myself.
Yeah.
I saw it on streaming when it came out, and it was really good. But like, I just couldn't, especially in I live in Canada, right? So I think our restrictions were a bit like stronger up here during that time
Yeah.
than down in America. So there was like no theater showing it. Um, Here's my question for you: like, what what do you like more actually? This or Godzilla versus Kong being the two kind of King Kong films, the
If
monsters.
I said GVK, people would kill me. Like, oh, it's objectively bad. But I always liked Kong Skull Island more. So mainly because I just like the characters more.
Yeah. See, I'll take the smoke because I actually like GVK more. Granted, I think this is like the better like film. Like this movie easily has the strongest like human characters and just dynamics of the films. This probably has the best pacing of them too.
But that wouldn't even
Um,
nobody would say that back in 2017. A lot of critics was or like YouTubers are like, oh, they're just trying to copy off of Marvel, and like, you really don't understand what you're talking about, do you? It's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like it's just something about these movies that kind of got a bad rap. I understand, like, maybe I understand a bit more for like King of the Monsters because that movie makes a lot of like strange decisions that I'm not a fan of. But like this, no, this is very much its own thing. And to be fair, I actually saw quite a couple of like. Funny enough, these days I don't really watch like YouTube like the YouTube movie critic space anymore. But back then I was deep into it, and some of them were pretty positive towards this. Um, Maybe not like enthralled, but I think most people kind of could take this movie or leave it.
yeah.
Um,
Now,
yeah, but like
like,
no, this is probably the best made MonsterVerse movie in terms of both once again like story aspect as well as delivering on your kind of meathead sometimes meatheaded monster action a bit. I mean, even then there's still some beautiful shots we're gonna see later and stuff, right?
we're already seeing them here with the humans. Like everyone, like in a kaiju movie, always shows the kaiju shots, but it's like one of these movies is like this bar scene is really well lit and really nice to look at.
Oh yeah.
Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah, I think. Oh,
I was going to say like we know that these are like the best characters of the MonsterVerse, but him and Brie Larson are just kind of like stale. I feel like he's more stale here. He has a better performance than Alan Taylor Johnson, I think, but his character isn't as interesting as Ford Brody was.
honestly, like I wouldn't like maybe not as interesting, but I definitely see what you mean. Where at least with Ford, he was kind of in the center of things, where this guy he feels like he's there just to kind of fight.
He's supposed to be like the Jack Driscoll, but not really.
The problem is, and I think this is actually like I think with monster movies, there's always like that thing of like how are the human characters? I think it's difficult for monster movies to have great characters because I think it's hard to balance the intrinsic motivations, right? Because it's like the movie's plot has like a good plot is usually driven by a character like the ideals of your main character and like what they're doing, right? How they carry the plot. Obviously, that's not like universal, but most of the time that's what people are kind of looking for, right? But the problem is with the monster, like with monster movies, the monster is both another character, but like one that is think about it, like kind of detached from everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
like it's supposed to be like, how, and you have to kind of find creative ways, like how are the humans going to tie in with this giant creature, because it's not just like, because like a monster also, um it can't just be, it's not like, it can't just be like a disaster movie, a tornado. They have to at least like represent something too, right? There's like, it's a whole different aspect, um and something like a kind of something to consider when it comes to storytelling with monster movies. And I think that's why like it's kind of easy for like, have a lot of movies where, yeah, like the humans are kind of the least interesting aspect. um
Sometimes
but
that's
like,
the case because sometimes it's like, oh, they're bad, so, or like they didn't work, so why even try? It's like, no, don't do that.
it's still worth something to try. I mean, like, I'll be honest, like I love I just said like GVK is probably my favorite MonsterVerse movie, and part of that is because like, even when the human stuff isn't, because the human stuff in that is fairly silly most of the time, but a bit like over the top and stuff. But I kind of like that, and I think the depictions of Godzilla and Kong are incredible in those movies. Like in that one, they feel the most like characters, but this one actually does Kong really good as a character too. As we're gonna see, like Kong is kind of easier, being um, monkey, well, an ape, like a mammal type creature. So it's easier to give him those kind of human expressions. Like, we could, like, us as an audience could like, you can really look into Kong's eyes and feel that kind of same sympathy you would feel for when you're looking at like a chimpanzee or gorilla, which are also
Mm.
like, fairly human esque enough that like we could really read their emotions better than like reptiles.
Well, I thought because Godzilla, sure, he's like based on reptiles. Why not? But he's still a fictional creature. You can still give him that human personality, even though Toho doesn't
Well,
want
that's
to.
what I'm just, yeah, no, they actually, and the thing is they do. I'm just saying that with Kong it's easier for them to do,
Yeah,
and that really shows in a lot of Kong movies, but this one, no exception.
yeah.
Um,
Boat takes off.
yep, I like how this movie. I also kind of respect that this movie doesn't, it doesn't waste its time, and we kind of get to the I like the plot in Island and stuff pretty quickly. Like,
Yeah.
no shade against no shade against the Jackson Kong. I think that one's really good too. Um, I'm just saying, like, like I said, I think this movie does pacing like really well.
Jackson's
Um,
version of King Kong is what he saw as a kid when he watched the original King Kong. Like it's very much like I don't know what the word is, but you would like watch it in slow motion as a kid. Like you're just in awe at everything, and like everything just going in slow motion, like and everything like that. That's kind of how I would like to describe Peter Jackson's take on King Kong.
yeah, another certain level of like they do while they're on that boat, they are building up the mystery and stuff. But like, I guess it depends on what you're looking for at the time, because sometimes that's cool. Like, when I think Jackson's Kong, I do think it's a grand epic. It really is like his Lord of the Rings movies, right? It's this like sweeping, like huge narrative, right? Where this one is like a more kind of bite-sized, punchy, like action movie, and like one's not really better than the other. It's just kind of what you're looking for, and this one like really delivers. And this one movie's like Skull Island. It still has like a level of grandiosity to it. Like we're gonna see that when Kong himself shows up.
I was going to say when you were talking about how it, like the characters, like what their motivation is and how they like tie into the monster. Like Colin is definitely supposed to be like in this movie, like Vietnam, because that's why Packard is like one of the most interesting characters in this movie is because he and his like troops just pulled out of Vietnam because it takes place right after the
Right.
Vietnam War. So once he sees all these happenings to his men, he's like, I gotta take revenge, or else I'll just feel like like I'm a waste or something like that. Like he's just
Well,
desperate.
yeah, because the whole thing with Vietnam was like after the war, right? And you know, the U.S. left, and this movie kind of movie like Vietnam soldiers are kind of inherently interesting for movies because it's like they fought in this war and it was the first time in at least like American history where they weren't really portrayed or seen as like heroes, right? Like in World War One and Two,
Hmm.
those like ads, propaganda ads and stuff, right? It's like, oh yeah, like fight for your country and all that jazz, right? Vietnam kind of took the showed like, hey, like portrayed the U.S. in kind of a negative light, and the politics aside, right when the soldiers came back, they were seen like there was a lot of scorn towards them and stuff, right? Like obviously Rambo, the first Rambo, really plays into that, right? Um, this and but there's also like this. It's also like just in general veterans, a lot of like military veterans, that kind of feel left, they serve their country, all that jazz, they come back and like the system kind of leaves them behind, right?
Hmm.
um so in that way, like Packard in this, he represents that. He's like, like I fought, like he fought for like what he thought was like a good cause and stuff, and then the war just ended, and you could kind of maybe see it as like he is left with nothing, but in his eyes, um war is what gives him that purpose, and in the end, like he kind of pays for that.
Yeah. He's like
Like
blind, blind rage. Like.
yeah, the for him, it's a case like the fight never ended for him,
Hmm.
even when it like for his own good, it probably should have,
Yeah.
um, and like that aspect's pretty interesting. Um,
Hmm.
and I feel like John Goodman here is a great counterweight to that because in a way, John Goodman he's the audience surrogate. He's the one who, like, as we know about like how these monsters are kind of like above us, right? That's the other thing. Like Packard, he's kind of coming from this as like he sees Kong later as almost like a rival soldier. John Goodman understands that these monsters are beyond humans. They are these like living natural disasters slash like guardians slash whatever, right?
Yeah.
And we as an audience know that too. We know that like we know the like how there's gonna be monsters everywhere. Like we know they need Kong. We know the power like Godzilla and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's like their dynamic is really neat in that sense, in both like in the story and in a meta sense. It really works. Like there's a reason these two are kind of like, well, two of the best characters because the best character shows up later.
Yeah. It's the side characters and the human villain that are the best characters, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you're just there to just see Tom Hiddleston be Tom Hiddleston, if you're into that.
Well, I guess that's the other thing too, because they're side characters, but like they get a lot of screen time.
Well, I just see Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson as the pseudo Jack Driscoll and Darrow type characters, so I see them as like the main characters. Well, John
No,
Goodman
they
is
are, they
Kong,
are,
so
they are. But I guess like we lucked out, and like even though they're not too interesting, we do get a lot of like there's a lot of other stuff that makes this movie like really work. And even then, they're not like annoying, right? It's all just like, oh my god, these two are on screen. Like it's just not as good. But, like what this all adds up to is like overall, this movie is just a great experience. This is an easy movie to watch,
hmm.
and I think that counts for something.
I was going to say that they did set up something about how Tom Hiddleston's character was like just trying to find his father or something because he never appeared again, like during World War II. And I thought, okay, so is he the son of John C. Riley's character? But it's never like that. They don't. It's not. So I was like, okay, what was the point of that then? So that's why.
Mhm.
Because I'm gonna say right now, when I first watched it, I saw it on IMAX. I actually just was underwhelmed by this movie, and I gave it like a 6 out of 10. But obviously that's changed now. So
Yeah,
because all the marketing pretty much showed all the monster footage and stuff, so I shouldn't have watched that because this
that's what
just
happened to me with King of the
King of the
Monsters.
Monsters. I knew what King of the Monsters was gonna be like because of that Reddit September leak. I was like, this is not gonna go well with critics, and sure enough, it didn't go well with critics, and like it
Yeah.
bombed. It's like they kind of messed up.
Yeah, with King of the Monsters had like a super aggressive marketing campaign. I think it was actually too aggressive because I wouldn't be surprised. A lot of people are in my boat where it's like I watched all the trailers, went to see the movie, and every single monster scene was in the trailers. As I was watching the movie, I wasn't like enjoying it, but I was like, I was just like, oh yeah, that's from the trailer. That scene's from the trailer. This clip's from the trailer, and I'm like looking for new stuff that like was never there.
Yeah,
This
they
movie I
never
didn't
give you
watch.
new stuff.
Yeah. See, this movie I didn't watch as many trailers for when it was coming out, and that was a good idea. Funny enough, when Godzilla vs Kong came out, I learned my lesson. I saw only the first trailer for Godzilla vs Kong, and that was such a good idea.
There were some TV spots they had, but I don't think they spoiled like they did with King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
I think they learned their lesson with that, especially when it was only 2 months of marketing compared to 10 months. They were marketing that thing for some reason like nobody cared after that.
I also think this movie did a smart thing where most of the trailers, the action shots, are from the first action scene, which is amazing. It's arguably the best action scene in the movie, but like at least the rest of it is still generally a welcome surprise.
Mm-hmm. I
Skull
remember
Island itself is so. I really like it in this one.
lots of water.
The water, yeah. Like I like how like Skull Island's always cool in some of the other movies because like this ominous place. But I like how in here it really is. You could just imagine it as any other island.
Yeah.
Like versus like Peter, once again Peter Jackson's Kong where there's like a big skull on the side and stuff. That is cool. Like and that fits that movie well. But like I said, they did a good job of. Von Robert straight up said he wanted his Skull Island to like be different from the others. I will say just because I love dinosaurs. I wish we had some dinosaurs here, but that's fine. What is there is pretty cool. The creatures.
Everything about this movie was just kind of wanting to be like, oh, this isn't your dad's King Kong. Like, this is completely different. Like,
I
we're
think
gonna
that
see
is the
Kong.
inherent. That's the inherent challenge of making a franchise film, though, right? Like, how do you? It's that's the number one thing. Like every director, no matter what, really, that's what they always kind of are wrestling with, right? It's like we want it to be like, and at these aspects, it's like the old ones, but like we want to put our own spin on it, and the like it's only afterwards where you kind of find out where the balance kind of went, right? I think this movie strikes a really good balance of adding its own like ingredients to things while it's like very much is like a King Kong story.
Yeah. It's kind of unfortunate that most of the talk after this movie came out was like, oh, see the post-credit scene? Oh, first look at Rodan. First look at Ghidorah.
Yeah, that is. I think that is more a case of like because that's very much like talks in the online space. Godzilla just has like online has a bigger fandom than King Kong does.
Yeah. Kind of weird because that sort of happened with Avatar. It's like, no, I don't remember Avatar. Like, I never watched it until last year. So, I'm like, yeah, it looks cool, but like, this is kind of a forgettable movie because it's kind of generic. No offense to any fans of the movie. I know Nick's probably watching this.
I mean, I think Avatar, the first one, it's good. Not, I wouldn't say it's great. I did. Let's not make this all about Avatar, but I did really like the sequel. But anyway, but like, yeah, that see Avatar. What that kind of did too was have a lot of people talk about like what's like kind of look differently at like what we see online versus what we see
Yeah,
in.
like it made over $2 billion as of right now
Yeah,
because, like,
yeah.
people are like nobody's gonna watch it. Like, what culture impact? Now I was like, yeah, I don't remember what it did other than like make a 3D craze, which is not a thing anymore. But then
Hmm.
out of nowhere, just like 2 billion. It's like, where did all these people come from?
Yeah, exactly.
It makes you realize that sometimes the internet isn't really that powerful of a voice, even though it's really pressing on you at the moment.
Yeah, sometimes you just kind of it's interesting to see what people say online, but like you can't like there's going to be stuff that like you just can't predict and you just won't know, and sometimes that's just how it is, right?
Just
I mean, I feel like I knew this before. Like I was thinking about this stuff even before the Avatar talks because I see this a lot in the music scene, right?
mhm.
Like you have bands and groups that like you go outside, no one knows who they are, but then you go to like Spotify, they have like 10 million, 50 million streams on their song. So it's like, okay, people are listening to this, but like, doesn't always translate to like, them being as named as Taylor Swift and stuff. I'm saying that and like, look, the shot's amazing.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to stop talking. Yeah. Uh,
Back to Kong, this action scene is so good. The
I was
presentation here is like top notch.
I think one of the reasons why I still prefer 2014 is that I still love the sound design because it never had the same punch in any other of the MonsterVerse films.
Oh no, the sound design in 2014 is some of the best sound design I've heard in an action blockbuster ever.
I think
Let
that's
alone the
why I still.
monster.
It's why that's probably my favorite MonsterVerse film, despite like it doesn't have the better characters. I just think that like it's just a amazing audiovisual experience because I just have a thing with audio.
No, I totally because I do too, and I totally get it. This movie, but Jesus Christ, this might be the strongest like monster introduction scene in the MonsterVerse though. Like as we were saw before, I sorry I talked over it, but like the camera panning up and the sunset, and now like this really explosive
What
and
about
pretty
what about the
kinetic
Hawaii?
action.
What about the Hawaii scene? 2014 isn't that like a good introduction though?
That is an amazing introduction. It's just unfortunate that the follow up is kind of a bait and switch.
Yeah.
Where this one, it's like we got the introduction and the follow up too. Like I'm kind of including the subsequent action scene, right? This is us being introduced to King Kong because also it's not just that this is an action scene. We're seeing his personality here. He's very like you kind of notice he's like he's almost holding back. Like he's taking a defensive kind of stance with these guys, and that's like he's a character. But we see like he's capable of being pretty brutal,
No, he's running.
and just it's just a really well done action scene too.
I was going to say like this isn't your dad's King Kong. It's like any other King Kong would have just been bleeding, gushing at this point. So it's like, hot. See, this King Kong can't do that.
Yeah,
Like he's
that's
restored. It's like
yeah that
we're like
yo
this
you
is
go.
your new King Kong. Like, this is like he can take this stuff. It's like we're reintroducing to the general public. Like, okay, we can't stop this King Kong. So now what? And this is
Yeah.
like at the beginning of the movie. It's like one of those subverting expectations, I guess.
That's also that was another thing this movie had to do where it's like it needs to be King Kong, but like there's a certain level of vulnerability to King Kong. Like he could fight dinosaurs and stuff, but like against a machine gun, he's just an animal. And this movie had to kind of introduce him as he's not an animal. He's a monster. He is a Godzilla level threat like monster. And Godzilla's whole thing is that he is not he has the power advantage over humans with his atomic breath and the invulnerability to guns and stuff. So that movie kind of had to balance that too, and I think they did that by like once again, Kong himself just has a lot of really strong like as his own character really. Um,
The other like minor soldiers are pretty good in this movie. Pretty.
yeah. Oh my god, the lighting in this scene is
Yeah,
amazing.
this is like I know people keep saying King of the Monsters, but that's like made like forcefully made to look beautiful. Like this just feels more natural.
It's actually ironic because I feel like King of the Monsters. I like rewatching some of those action sequences. I don't like the look of them as much. I like there is a lot of like the rain and snow and stuff. It makes things very busy. Where I do like the more natural lighting in this and like GVK.
Mm-hmm.
I remember people another a bit of a worry too was like because Godzilla 2015 it was people were still bummed that like they felt like there wasn't like as much monster action as maybe there should have been, so people were kind of worried they were going to do the same for this, but no, I mean look at this. And also this is just part like it's insane and awesome, that shot right there.
Yeah, I was going
Once
to
again,
say
we kind of see we kind of see Samuel L. Jackson's character. He's seeing Kong as like a rival soldier more than what he really is, like as like a creature of this kind of island.
yeah, he's a tragic villain.
Yeah, like I said, they do. It's a super interesting idea to have a character like that where they see the monster as like this enemy. It almost I haven't read it myself, so I might be speaking complete shit here, but the comic series Godzilla: The Half Century War.
Yeah, I only read part of it like years ago.
Yeah,
Man, that was
yeah.
a long time
I
ago.
know in that one the idea is basically like as a soldier as he's in all these wars and he keeps running into Godzilla and he kind of I don't know if that does the same thing, but
I'd love to see that as like a TV show or movie. That would be cool.
very very Aliens X the way the other soldiers are acting. I feel like obviously Aliens is the template for not just space marines but just marines in general.
Yeah.
Just have a lot of like these really big personalities clashing off each other.
Hmm. I used to like James Cameron movies. Then he made Avatar. Well, at least he's making money and has some fans.
Funny enough, like Aliens is really good, but it's far from my favorite movie of his. I love I think Terminator 2 is his best.
Yeah.
Terminator 2 is like the greatest. I call it the greatest action movie ever made. It's not even my favorite action movie, but it's the best action movie ever made.
I'm trying to think it. Do I have something above Terminator 2 in terms of action movies? I guess Dark Knight, but
For more personal reasons, I'd say like John Wick. um, but I just adore all those movies. That I love back.
I keep forgetting who this actor's name is. But
I do not know actor names.
yeah, yo, these guys are cool.
Yeah, like there's a like it's pretty punchy and pretty good like dialogue. Not like mind blowing, but like as good as it needs to be. And once again, combined with just really good performances all around.
Yeah, the
Like
people are.
the,
Oh no, they're doing the MCU. Even back then, like, oh, it's MCU-ify, and like, come on, man. Just
I think it's like people were predisposed to fearing that. And then kind of it's one of those things where it's like you ever heard that term? It's like if you want to find something, then you'll definitely find it. Like they were like at the time of the MCU blowing up, and I think with a lot of especially critics, even though they liked those movies, it's like, oh no, what if this is influencing the rest of cinema? Like cinema, I feel so pretentious when I say that now, but like
now it's just a
influencing like
trend.
other movies, and then they go into other franchise stuff like looking for it.
Now it's just a common thing that people do, even when it's stupid and doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That green screen right there, that background doesn't look good. That, like, this is like one of those parts where the movie kind of looks ugly or it doesn't look good. Like they put the budget into it. Like it looks too blurry in the background.
Yeah, like I mean, there's always issues like that sometimes. Sometimes, I mean, you look into movie productions, and there's always things that like go wrong, and they can only do so much. So it's not even money; it's just a time issue. Like hell, I've heard of stories where like sometimes a scene was actually done and looked good, and then the like it got corrupted later, and they couldn't use it, so they kind of had to like quickly redo it and stuff. Like it's
It's so weird
just
because
mistakes are bound
it
to
seems like
happen.
a simple thing to do, like this. just use the background and everything. But I don't know because I'm not a VFX guy. But it just bothers me. There's another thing at like later in the movie where there's like a calm skull and like there's some fire. It doesn't look like it's actually on the skull or anything like burning. It's
Yeah.
like one of those random
At least this movie
moments.
looks good when it counts, and that's when Kong's on screen. Like Kong looks consistently great in this.
Like the most part of this movie looks consistently great. It's just like these weird moments that take me out of it.
It's funny too as we're talking over this because like that scene, writing wise is pretty intense, and once again, there's two great performances bouncing off each other.
Yeah.
Um, Once again, having Packard point the gun at him too. Once again, we're really selling that idea of like the war is not done for him. It's done for like everyone else.
Mm-hmm. He's a sore loser.
I kind of I love that idea. Just
I
like
don't think he'd
talking
do
about
good in an online match of Call of Duty.
he he docks me.
It's time to show the new Master 69 that man is king. Skier Buffalo.
Kind of like the idea that like we, even though this is an island crazy monsters, we do have some creatures that are like otherworldly, but fairly standard part of the like fauna. Like you kind of imagine something like this being out there just in the world, right? It's not too crazy.
The Brontosaurus in the Jackson films were pretty normal creatures, even though like in the original King Kong, it's like it just freaking kills people in the water.
Yeah. I love whenever like Brie Larson raises the camera. It reminds me of like, remember in the Lost World, the T Rex is like at some kid's house, and then he like takes a picture, flashes it. It's implied the T Rex destroys the house. I guess like it cuts away, but
I haven't seen that movie in a long time because I personally don't like it.
oh, true. I watched it. I do like it, but like I watched it recently for a Jurassic Park kind of thing, little marathon. It was fun.
Speaking of he says, "Hold on to your butts" when they were like going into the
Well,
storm.
well, true.
Here we got our own Spire Pit version of our own version of the Spire Pit sequence.
This yeah, this right here is like my this is like my nightmare. I'm scared of spiders. I'm not scared of this like this scene in particular, but like God, if this thing were real, I couldn't live on this world.
Hey, Matt, this is just a normal day in Australia.
Oh yeah, there's something so freaky about like it having like tree-sized legs.
Yeah, it's adapted to nature to like prey on people. It just gets a Cannibal Holocaust reference, I guess.
I was saying the way they kind of like were cutting between them and the dead guy was kind of funny. That no, that's an ominous fucking joke.
Oh, this movie has some FPS shots. Like, I wish we could have some of that in more movies, or like action movies.
Doom ruined it for everyone.
Yeah, freaking Doom is like when they tried to be like the video game for like 10 seconds. Like, nobody wanted to do it.
Mm.
This movie saved cinema. Then you realize that like this spider ain't nothing. You just cut it off. It's like it spent all its points on stealth and nothing else.
Sneak 100. God, that is so freaky with the crab claws, like the little crab claws trying to actually pull him up.
Oh, that shot. Oh, guts. We gotta have like for me, a King Kong movie has to be brutal, or else it's not a King Kong movie.
Yeah, this movie is fairly brutal. Actually, probably the most brutal MonsterVerse movie.
Yeah.
Between this and like the final kill, like
There was like like Colin GVK pulled off that Warbat head and then just started eating it.
Yeah. You know, I remember when this came out, I was actually like kind of really back and forth on which I like more, this or 2014. These days, I do think this. 2014 is still really good. It's really interesting how it's just so different from a lot of other blockbusters. But with even like now, I do kind of realize like I at least I feel like the middle of that will kind of drag. So this movie is just like I said. I think its pacing is just one of its strongest suits. It's just generally entertaining front to back, and even like I can't really think of like boring bits. I'm sorry if you hear beeping on my end. I think there's like a truck backing up upstairs, outside.
No, you have a truck upstairs.
You know that might cause a bit more noise.
That's why you're picking it up. We got the spooky jump scare coming up. I like to just think these days we're just here for hours doing nothing,
Oh jeez.
just having their
Yeah,
eyes closed, like just there, just for the scene.
I really like too about this movie is like because it's always finicky when we get to depictions of like quote unquote tribal people, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of unfortunate histories when it comes to like that sort of thing, right? Especially with how we view indigenous peoples and stuff, and like especially living in Canada, U.S. But I like how this movie like once again kind of bait and switch because at first it's like they're super ominous, and then this guy shows up, the best character in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and then we kind of see like no, they're just like a chill like people who live on the island. They just have their kind of own ways of doing things. So I think that's really nice to see.
Yeah.
Also, the Giga Chad in the flesh, such a good character.
I I remember Jordan Roberts said he wanted to like if he could he make like a movie where it was just him when he was younger with the guy named Gunpei. And
That would
I
be
would love to just have him just like in the 40s Skull Island and like maybe he would explain why there's a Triceratops skull. Like we could see some dinosaurs and stuff, and then like see some skull crawlers and all that. And then we
and
get
more
like a
Kong.
flash forward to like him like in the 2010s, and it's like he meets up with Corey Hawkins' character, and be, be like, "Yo, I saw that giant lizard on the screen. That was cool. And guess what? The Cubs just won." And then like he passes away, and he has like a funeral, and like we see Zarasawa there and stuff. So that'd be cool. I don't know. I'm just thinking of an emotional way to send him off.
Yeah, I mean, like just a movie with focusing more on some of these. Once again, these side characters are just really. It's also okay. It's not just the performances and characters in the movie; just their backstories are just really interesting. Like
I'm
um,
I'm pretty sure this guy's name is Toby Kebbell. If I'm not, I apologize because two people play Calm, but he's literally just looking at himself right now because
that's funny. Oh, Kong ass.
yeah, I watch these movies for the plot.
This scene.
I was so happy because this shot reminds me of the first Colossus from Shadow of the Colossus. So when they did what was it, a watch along in 2020, I asked Vogue Roberts if that shot was inspired by Shadow of the Colossus, and he told me that a lot of the director of Shadow of the Colossus's work was influenced by it. So he that was so
Von
cool.
Roberts is like a proper nerd.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all the MonsterVerse directors, he's like an actual nerd. Like I mean, hell, I don't watch them anymore. I'm not a big fan, but I remember Von Roberts with the there was like the Cinema Sins and Screen Junkies controversy.
Oh yeah, that like I'm glad he was like one of those first people that called them out.
Yeah, back then, I didn't I didn't like Cinema Sins, but I didn't think they were like that big a problem, like quote unquote a problem. And technically, like they're not, but like we kind of see now, like they kind of had a negative influence film discourse online and stuff, right? But and so when Vaughn Roberts like called about it at the time, I was like, "Oh, come on, really? You're gonna let them get to you like that?" But what made me kind of like change my perspective was when he showed up on Screen Junkies, and he's like, and they were like, "Oh, like." They basically talk about the cinema incident. They're like, and of course you'd be here to fight for your film. And he's like, no, I just think their criticisms were bullshit. Let me give you some actual criticisms. And I remember he literally said, like, what was it? I think it's like, this movie comes off as a guy trying to make Aliens, but accidentally made Alien versus Predator. Which was like, that's freaking nuts.
Bruh.
I wouldn't even say like obviously I don't think it's that big extreme, but like he is able to, at least in that video, he was certainly be able to like be critical of his own work in like a fair way, and I think he at that point I was pretty convinced that he was a stand up guy.
Yeah. Apparently he's still doing that Metal Gear Solid movie.
I'm, I'm not too like I mean you've shown me some Metal Gear Solid stuff. Outside of that, I'm not too familiar. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like Revengeance, because Revengeance is nuts.
Yeah. Still need to play the games. But...
Yeah, see, like this is nice, like because whenever we've seen the quote unquote the tribal people in the older Kong movies, it's like, oh, the human sacrifices and they're like cannibals almost or something, right? But in this one, like they're just a people. They're just kind of they have their own culture, their own way of doing things.
Someone needs like make like a Skull Island ranking system, like based on like just how how much you would survive in it, and like I'm pretty sure the Toho one would be easy. Like, would you rather live on this or Peter Jackson's one?
You know what? Because I feel like if I could avoid the little skull crawlers, I think the big ones would at least not treat me like food. They just ignore me, and then most of the other threats seem maybe manageable. I have to live on the plains with these boys, and I think I'm kind of okay. Where I feel like in Jackson's Kong, everything is small enough to view people as a food source. Like those T-Rexes are mental. They'll destroy everything just to eat like a person. Right?
In the 33 one, freaking brontosauruses are gonna wanna freaking devour you. They'll come out of the lake and chase you.
And I couldn't see them because everything's black and white.
Oh yeah, that's a fact, dude. Everything turns off the color when you.
Yeah. As soon as you enter that island, you can't see. This is pretty solid. Like that looks strong enough that like even these exposition dumps are actually pretty cool, and they're pretty quick.
Oh look, it's Batman.
It's getting kind of cool. Kind of simultaneously learning both about Kong and the people like of this place.
When you return to Monkey.
I mean, that is the thesis of every King Kong movie. It's an analysis on the idea of returning to Monkey. Kind of a nice touch. You see where his fur was still grazed by the helicopter, and he kind of carries that scar with him.
Well, you saw like his hand was like messed up during that squid fight scene.
Yeah. Squid Fight, was it Squid Games?
I think I've seen a criticism as to why, like, he first makes a joke about the skull crawlers, but before we even see them, which is kind of not really the best way to like introduce your villain monster.
You know what? I actually never really noticed that. Yeah, we even without that joke, it's still kind of weird that they're mentioned before we see them. we never get that, like, you see the skull crawler and you're kind of like, what is this thing, right? It is kind of, that was a strange choice. Maybe something was lost in the editing room, but
Because
yeah.
because later after this we see like the one soul soldier. He's like he gets like killed by one. And that would have been cool because it's like we only see it for like a split second, and then we would get this scene.
I gotta say, the skull crawler is an amazing monster design.
It's
um
based on that two-legged lizard.
yeah, and also, I mean, just in terms of just being a unique just creature, because obviously we you know, in movie monsters we've seen our fair share of reptiles, and hell, even the ones that like walk, like everyone, that also criticism you see all the time of like when the monsters have that, like, they walk like the Cloverfield monster with the big arms.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys, like, I think they look very. I mean, I think most of the time when that criticism comes up, I'm like people say the Mutos. I think the Mutos have a pretty interesting design too in their own sense, but the Skull Crawlers, are like, I can't really think of a lot of things that kind of look like that,
Mm-hmm.
or like anything for comparison. Even like, because they're kind of lizards, they kind of move like snakes. The face, the like face paint, right? Like the white head really makes it, like, gives it a good like standout look.
Yeah. I I I forgot what I was gonna say. Sorry. That is one ugly bird. That's a big birdie.
Look at the
That's like a
sulfate, crazy.
yeah. I didn't realize it. I forgot about that. That would be cool. Because these guys would later just go, oh that's why like because later we see these guys like take one of the dudes and like fly him up and then like one of them fall like closes in on the leg and like cuts it off. I'm like it's because he has a saw like beak.
That kills. It's funny we're talking about it, even though that's like quite a bit of ways. But that kills crazy good,
Yeah.
brutal. Well, I love the atmosphere of this film.
Mm-hmm.
Just like climbing, like just crawling through like the swamps. Very, very Vietnam film esque.
That's the whole point. Apparently, it was like the highest grossing film in Vietnam, so it worked. And they filmed in Vietnam, I think.
That's cool.
That boat back there was called the Wanderer. That's the original name of the boat they used in the novelization of King Kong. Like in the
Talk about
classic.
Vietnam so much. Maybe this takes place in the same universe as Forrest Gump.
Babe Ruth.
I think what this movie probably, I think what it does really well now I think about it, a very interesting take is like, because watching it now again, it's like, it does have that kind of old school, like, Lost World type, like, adventure movie feel. Um, and it actually kind of modernizes that in some pretty smart ways, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's actually kind of cool that, like, it's not just, oh, there's like a mysterious island, we want to send an expedition to it and stuff, right? Like, at the beginning of this movie, we didn't even mention it. Like, they're just, it was like, what, cartography, basically? They're just trying to map it out, right?
Yeah.
But then, like, everyone kind of had, like, their kind of side missions, as it were, of, like, John Goodman looking for the monsters and all that.
Yeah. This is a nice wholesome scene.
Yeah, once again, some great characterization for just like it's fictional indigenous group, but like once again, kind of showing how we a bit of progression of how indigenous people are portrayed in movies versus the old ones. Because like obviously in the first Kong, it's it's the 30s, so it's pretty problematic, and Jackson's Kong doesn't put a lot of focus on them, so they're just kind of like the angry locals.
Mm-hmm.
And like I like obviously those don't kill those movies, like right, but it's nice to see some progression on that front with this. And it also, like story wise, makes the island feel very alive. Too, where we understand that like how these humans exist in their world with the monsters. Also, this also seen great stuff for Kong's development.
Also, like this was the days before Brie Larson was the number one hated person on the incel fandom.
Yeah, it was all right to think she was like pretty, and her role in this isn't amazing, but it's a decent performance, pretty good performance. But yeah, overall, also I kind of like the and once again way more meta sense with the other monster verse continuity, kind of showing how Kong is he's the ruler of this island in a sense, and that also involves taking care of the creatures around him. And right here, also showing he doesn't hate humans inherently.
Oh, here we
He's
come.
just like
This one meme that this was the meme that people used all the time before, like they thought that one random soldier's death was like the funniest thing ever.
I also like how this kind of shows that he realizes that Brie Larson is like not of this island, but he once he labels you as harmless, he'll leave you alone.
Yeah,
And once again, great characterization. But what I was saying was, in a meta sense, being the ruler of this island, you can see how it's like
dear.
almost like it's preparing him where he could potentially, as we know in the lore, like the Kongs, as I guess we could call them, or contenders to being the up on the top of the hierarchy of monsters, right?
I'm pretty
Um,
sure the him being like the guardian was. I think like the first thing they did was the Kong animated series, which of course spawned those two direct-to-video sequels to capitalize on Peter Jackson's film, like King of Atlantis and our the only movie, Return of the Jungle.
I was when you asked me to do this, I was tempted to say one of those, but I kind of I'm like, you know what? Let's watch a good one.
What are you talking about? Those movies are fantastic. I'm gonna have to review them.
Godspeed to you, soldier.
I guess there's this there's this moment where I'm like, are they trying to do something with John Goodman's character? And I feel like
Oh
they're
no, I think it's just I think that scene actually is good in that it's showing that like he has been researching these monsters, right? And obviously he saw Kong from the plane and stuff, but I think for him it's him realizing how big they like physically how big they are. And once again that narrative of him understanding how insignificant the humans are in the presence of these giant monsters.
yeah.
That's how I always took it.
I don't know. I maybe it's thinking of something different. Yeah, did. Oh yeah, the Cubs did win, like before this movie came out. So what if they didn't? Would this be as funny?
It's be hilarious.
Hmm.
From the boat, like looks like a Tie fighter. Like God,
I can't believe George Lucas stole his idea from it. Yeah, because this takes
he
place in
looked
3073. They freaking
he
did it.
looked he looked in the future and literally picked a random. He saw the future and he saw a random scene from Kong Skull Island and used that as a ship design in Star Wars.
No, in universe, Kong Skull Island it exists in the real world.
This is a documentary.
Yeah,
Very brave of the camera crew to get these pretty intricate shots of veterans in despair.
the cameraman is inseparable unless it's in close light.
I like that the stick insect was a whole like tree. I like that.
This scene should have been placed before they talked about the skull clones.
No, no. On yeah, actually, yeah. She could just edit this like into like beforehand and it'll work.
Yeah, but that would literally like cut from the mirror squid to this scene. So they wanted to pace it out, but then they realized, oh, they introduced the skull crawler, so it was as a joke. So it's like they kind of messed up
Mm-hmm.
with that pacing a bit.
What kind of music is
Oh
that?
yes, the I'm gonna stab you by the end of the night scene.
You're like a time traveler, man. I'm telling you, this is the new sound. I don't know if I'm gonna like whoever's under this beard.
I really hope that thing you call a boat can get us upriver in 36 hours, because if we miss that window, we're, literally up a creek.
Oh yeah, there's one girl that was kind of just there for the Chinese audience.
Yeah, I don't think we've barely seen her at all.
Yeah,
Then I thought he was crazy when he said there are for monsters.
the best they give her is that she's there. I don't even know how she was introduced. I completely forgot.
I think I mean, I'm fairly sure she is just like, yeah, one of the scientists or whatever. But
that just Corey Hawkins' character just happens to stumble upon, and it's like, in the book, it's like, oh, she's my wife now, and then they like have a son, and they have this whole calling Skull Island on the '90s or something like that. So
Wow.
right.
Try this.
Thank you. Royal Air Force?
My father's. He threw it to me from the train as he rolled off to fight the Nazis.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm kind of forgetting. Wasn't there like a bit where it's just like, oh, you're gonna show them the truth, and then like people still don't know about monsters for like 40 years.
oh yeah, oh it's because we actually now that he's because he's the leader of Monarch now he has to like hide it from people for some reason. That character
Yeah, I
developed.
think at the end of the movie they kind of like, yeah, like we have to hide this because there's so much more stuff going on. It's gonna get really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Packard,
I wish we had more scenes like this with John Goodman.
is folly.
Yeah,
I understand going after your man.
so yeah, we can kind of see Samuel Jackson's character. He's really kind of losing it now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like the way I'm running things? You know where the door is.
It's funny too because it's like his motivations are like, oh yeah, like revenge for my men. It almost feels you can tell that like it's more an excuse. There was a skull.
Yep, there it is, Skull Mountain.
This is what's that YouTuber's name? One of the Godzilla YouTubers, who like loves Kong. This is like his favorite shot of the MonsterVerse.
Yeah, D-Man.
Yeah, D-Man. Because he loves the Aurora Borealis, so it's literally just like two things he loves coming together. And it was a really great shot. And once again, good at a nice visual way of humanizing Kong. That's like the great Kong movies. That's what they do best, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like in that first Kong, obviously, it's still kind of, I guess, say primitive and how it does things, but that's kind of like the way it ends is what makes it so fascinating. With Kong's death and how he turns out to kind of be a tragic figure, and the really great Kong movies have all like took that kind of took the next step.
I think people just read into it more, so it was more subtle, or
Yeah,
how they interpreted it. Is that like aggressive animals like death is still like a tragic thing.
yeah. But I like with this too. Like once again, see how GVK. You could really see how this Kong like led into GVK. Um, Hell, I mean, I will say you could. It's kind of interesting too because even though Godzilla acts differently in all his movies, like the evolution from him from beginning into GVK is actually kind of interesting. It's like he progressively got more personality, but the more personality he got, the more of an asshole he became, which I kind of love.
Kind of, I actually think Khan and the one from GVK is kind of different because the way they like portray and like set everything up or like pace it. Because Khan is in GVK way more than he is in this movie. Like he feels like
Oh yeah,
like that. He's in it twice as much.
yeah. GVK. I mean, one of GVK's strengths is on the few monster movies in general. Really, when you kind of break them all down, where it feels like Kong and Godzilla are actual main characters. And I don't say that like once again as an insult to movies that kind of use them more sparingly. I'm just saying like they feel more active in the plot lines than in most other monster movies in general, which is really interesting take. And I think for like in that movie, it really pays off.
Yeah, I feel like War for the Planet of the Apes kind of just proved that we can do this now.
Oh my god, those three. I have not seen the original Planet of the Apes. Shame on me, but I have seen those remake movies from Rise to War, and those are like some of my favorites of all time.
Yeah.
I think War for the Planet of the Apes is like a perfect movie.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it twice. It's incredible.
You want to watch a movie after this commentary?
No, I'm gonna go eat and then catching up on Attack on Titan with the boys.
Oh no. Attack on Titan.
Yeah,
Did they only come up with that one episode already?
yeah. It's like an hour. It's like a 50 minute long episode.
How many episodes are they going to have?
I don't know.
It's kind of weird because aren't all the episodes supposed to be 24 minutes?
Usually in other shows where it would be like a proper season, when a season comes back, well, like some seasons do start with like hour long episodes. It's more so just like a two-parter basically being released on the same day. Yeah. Let's not talk about that while watching this, which is ironic because I think Jordan Vaughn Roberts is a big fan of Attack on Titan. Like a lot of people are. I'm just sticking the mud when it comes to that series.
Well, I did. Until now, like I watched the whole thing, and I really like season 2 and 3.
I did not like season 2, but I love season 3.
Mm.
And I think the first half of season 4 is actually some really good stuff, and then the pacing goes to shit. See, if I were to go into that could be its only 2-hour video, just because I actually know how the series ends.
Me too.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's a whole different discussion. Anyway, back to this.
Well,
back to the
millions
Kong.
of people on Twitter are just going to be like, no, it's the greatest thing ever, and like say the most crazy stuff if you don't like it.
That's a Twitter brain for you, man. Twitter brain. I'll also say this. I think the movie actually does a half decent job of balance. It's a pretty big cast, and we're constantly switching between a handful of characters, and it never loses focus.
Kind of, you could say it's better than Cocaine Bear.
Cocaine Kong, different story.
Technically, you could actually make that movie because
Kong's public domain, you know?
Yeah, you can just do that as long as it's not like the 33 film. Just do that. Cocaine Kong. That actually
Cocaine Kong.
sounds kind of cool. Cocaine Kong. Oh, here he comes. He's gonna.
Oh my god, this is so. Oh.
How do you do that in a PG-13 film?
Yeah, it's just funny because even there's so many movies and it's not just recently, like over the years in general, it's really interesting when they really stretch the PG-13 rating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how people are talking about, like, regardless of what I think of the film, like Doctor Strange, the eyeball monster at the beginning, they tear it out. It's like really gross.
Yeah.
And the blood's red too. That's the general cop out, right? Like, I mean, how Alien vs Predator, that first film, right? Even though it it doesn't have a greater R rating because there's not a lot of human blood. The aliens and Predator, they're cutting each other up all the time because the blood's green.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure it said slime and gore as the PG-13 rating.
Yeah, slime.
What? Imagine how much slime is in the Kids' Choice Awards for Nickelodeon. Like, imagine that R rating.
Yeah, but yeah, that is usually the general comment. Yeah, this is a nice scene too. But also once again, it's a nice scene, but it shows, fellow soldier, fellow man out war, right? Although ironically for our boy here, I'm I would say he's like the greatest character in this movie, and I'm blanking on his name, such with an H, right?
I don't know. It's John C. Riley.
John C. Riley. All right, John C. Riley. Um, um, even though for John C. Riley, he literally like the war ended for him. He became best friends with a Japanese soldier.
Yeah, there's a difference in that.
There's a great contrast here. Like this. In a way, this island really changed him, and for the better.
Yeah, and his son is just played by his younger self.
I guess maybe that is one thing where it's like I'm talking a lot about these themes of like war and then soldiers and stuff, and that's really present in this movie, and it's really cool when it's there. A great line, "You're gonna die." But maybe like if the movie focused on that like maybe a bit more, it would have been an even stronger human kind of driven narrative. I mean, what we got is still really good, and honestly, yeah, a step above a lot of monster films. But oh yeah, your classic the graveyard. All these giant bones. There is a kind of irony to the idea of monsters on an island, because the thing with islands is that you usually find smaller creatures on them.
Yeah.
And you look at like fossil records, actually what you could find with a lot of like dinosaurs and stuff is like if there's a dinosaur that lived on both a big continent and had like the same dinosaur lived on an island, the island ones are always smaller. Because there's like less food and stuff. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, but this is Skull Island. This is a different type of island.
It's built different.
I mean, it is. I'm trying to look for all the random nobodies that are just in the background that they have to kill accounts.
I think a couple people die in this next scene, right?
Yeah. My dead parents.
R.I.P.
For a tracker, you haven't really been doing so good. This reminds me of the Gamma 2 Redneck dub.
That's kind of hilarious. The cigarette butt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't even like, it's not even like immediate. That's like, everyone's like, whoa, that happened.
Run!
Run! I think that was a trailer shot.
Yep, I was gonna say. Oh yeah, the vomiting scene is also like pushing the limit there.
It's like the host.
Yeah. Another great.
God, the host is so good.
So many good kaiju movies. People just like, but it's not Godzilla. Would Godzilla fight it? Would he win? Holy crap! It's the Red Skull. Yep, there he goes. If he was only throwing up his skull, where's the rest of the bones?
I think there were some other bones in there. They just focused on the skull.
The skull, because it's Skull Island.
It's symbolic of the fact that this place is named Skull Island.
Yeah.
The sword from his Japanese friend. You know what's? It's kind of ironic because like I don't like samurai. So I'm not like a weapon nerd or anything, but usually swords were more customary thing.
You see the freaking like flashing from the camera. People thought
That-
that was like ability during like the trailer, like electricity, or like it was hinting at Kong gonna have electricity. But no,
Right.
it was just dead John Goodman's camera.
Yeah.
No flash photography.
And there goes John Goodman. Press off.
There we go. The sword is going to do it.
I was actually about to say I actually like read up a long time ago that like swords weren't really made for fighting. Well, obviously like they are, but like in a real like medieval battles, spears were kind of the primary weapon.
Yeah, because those are like longer.
Yeah, but like the thing with samurai sword in particular, even like quote unquote like samurais use spears, but the sword was very much like a customary thing. Like they would always have it on them, and it was like symbol of honor and stuff.
Well, he only had that one weapon with him because he didn't have the gun. So.
No, yeah, that's why I say it's kind of cool. It's kind of a cool touch, because yeah, like even in World War II, there were probably Japanese soldiers who kind of had them on like for like once again customary reasons, cultural reasons. Some explosions. Oh my god! Of course, the grenades just in the fire.
Oh yeah, there's like one of those things from those YouTubers. Like he puts on the mask, he fights them, and then he takes off the mask while the gas is still there. Marlowe, I think Hank Marlowe. Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
I will say this scene. I do think it's legitimately cool. The slow mo in the fog. You know what's funny? I think in the art book, this scene was like red. The smoke was meant to be like orange or red.
Oh, look, he's got gas.
Takes off the mask. Yeah, just the way they move is really fluid.
Yeah, because they use their tails. The prehensile tails is what makes them.
Yeah, honestly. Like I said, it's kind of like this combination of like a snake, but like with with like a monkey's tail in a way. Yeah, like this movie does really deliver on the action. The action is like legitimately like pretty well shot and well executed. Has a good like energy to it.
I don't believe that fire on the right side of the skull. How could Wreck-It Ralph be debating Nick Fury on this? Yeah, it's kind of weird that how like people are like, oh, this is just worse than Godzilla 2014. Like this is just trying to be like the MCU. Like this movie sucks. And then like years later, it's like, nah, this is the best MonsterVerse movie that's happened. Like,
Yeah.
it's just freaking internet revisionist history. I freaking hate it. One of these days, I'm gonna make a video on like how this stuff just annoys me.
Yeah, I'll say that this movie is definitely more of like, see, I say standard not as an insult, but like it is more what you'd expect from a action adventure film and what it kind of delivers and stuff. Where Godzilla is definitely like Godzilla is almost trying to be like a thriller, like a pseudo thriller at times, and I think that makes it more like unique. That first the 2014 movie, but like yeah, like I said, like these movies, this one in particular did get kind of a bit of a bad rap. I say a bit because like I don't know, I saw a lot of praise for it at the time.
Yeah, it's
It
just
did
like those specific people, like the use.
right.
It just got really annoying. But then it's like all of a sudden, like that doesn't exist anymore because there's just now people that change their tune, or it's just like there's just other people. Like suddenly, like it's like freaking No Way Home. Like that's one random example. It's like, oh, this is like the greatest Spider-Man movie of all time, or like this is fantastic. And then the 3 months later, it's like, oh, this is worse. It's just nostalgia bait. Like this looks terrible. It's like things have like an expiration date on whether or not, like, especially with new movies, on whether they're good or bad.
I guess it may, yeah, but I think that's just because I don't think it's the same people saying different things. Sometimes it's just like different groups of people. Um, and also like because nerds could be unhealthily obsessed about some things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the average person, they're gonna go and they see a film and they think it's good or bad, and like they don't think about it afterwards because they have like other interests and other things to do. And I feel, see, the real toxic behavior I see online in like movie communities is like people really look down on that. It's like, yeah, like it's like, oh, like they need to, like, why don't you, ironically I used to be in this boat. It's like, why don't you think more about like the stuff you're watching? It's like, well, because maybe like their interests lie elsewhere. Maybe they're like into like cooking, like food, or mechanics or something. Like maybe they're like that kind of brain space is just kind of used elsewhere. And like regardless of that, like most people, yeah, they'll see something, they'll say it's good or bad, and then they move on. But like, because here's the thing, right? Like No Way Home is a great example. Like, the average person sees like, yeah, that was great because like, I like it too. I think it's like it's a fun, like one of the better MCU movies. I think when they did their like bringing the old characters back, they brought them in interesting ways that really fit the narrative and stuff, right? Um, but you had to select the people who didn't like that. But the thing is, like after people praised it, but then obviously, like they moved on. They're like, why talk about Spider-Man? Why talk about any movie for like more than a couple weeks or whatever? Like, right? That's what the average person kind of thinks. But then the nerds, right? The quote unquote like
Film
the,
Twitter.
like film Twitter and stuff. They're like, they talk about the same movie for like a year on end
Or if
to the
you're
point
a
where it's like,
Snyder fan, for
yeah,
who knows?
it's good to like things and it's good to talk about things and it's good to have your opinions and stuff, right? But sometimes you just have to move on, you know.
You know,
And the
move
thing is, I
on
think.
Tangled a little. To be fair, my positivity of Tangled is much different.
Yeah, like obviously it's fine to be in fandoms, of course. Like it's fine to feel like that you want to, like, hey, I want to talk about things, right? But like I think we, and I say we, like me too, like because I'm a fucking nerd as well, right? But us as like a nerd culture needs to have you need to kind of distance yourself from these things and kind of like realize, okay, like yeah, it's obviously like these movies are art and they mean something and this, that, and the third, but like they're still like it's a film. It's just a thing that exists, and we could just take it easy sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I like, fuck, like I get mad at things I think are bad sometimes too. Maybe not as much as other people, but like I like to talk my shit, right? But like I can't let that like affect my mood or what I think of people and stuff. And I think a lot of people just need to like relax because like with what you're talking about, right? Like tying back once again, this is a Kong commentary and tying back to this movie, right? There's a lot of snobbery when it comes to that. It's like oh, it's like the MCU, and you know, I mean, have you ever thought like when we say lowest common denominator, how it's like it's kind of rude, you know?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Um, especially like there's a certain pretension around these things where it's like it's always cliched the whole like let people enjoy things, right? And it's like yeah, like because see the real answer is yeah, let people enjoy things because it's none of your business, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's the internet, so everything is everyone's business. That's the That's the real problem right there. And we're talking once again. We went off course. This scene is a great scene. This scene's a great scene.
I think some
Humanizes.
green screen is a little off though.
It is, but I think of in terms of just once again Kong's personality really coming through, having where he, like, it's also I really like how in retrospect too this movie really sets up some of the dynamics of Godzilla versus Kong in some really strong ways. Like that scene shows that Kong is more on the side, maybe not the side of humanity, but he has that connection with us. And with Godzilla, it's kind of different. Even though Godzilla kind of has that connection with Serizawa in particular, it is a level. There's like a bit more of like a. You can kind of see that antagonism in his movies. Like even when Serizawa revives him, he he kind of looks at the humans with a bit of disdain still, right?
Yeah.
And counteracting with Kong, who is, he grows up on an island full of like the tribal people, which, and we kind of see that there's a what they do tell us, that there is a positive relation there, and that is reflected in how he does view humans, even though he knows that like they are part of like the invaders are trying to destroy his island, or at least kill him. Great shot, love the mood. Oh, that might be my favorite shot in the movie. That is so cool. And this scene is so intense. And I think that's I think in that scene too, it also highlights like that shot of Packard's face really shows his mindset of seeing Kong as like a rival warrior versus a creature like a.
And then Kong coming out of the fire. This is cool too. And then the trailer shot. There's fire on it.
Oof. Yeah, we're in the.
This is Nick 5 minutes into
it. See, that'd be really funny if you do your commentary with him and he just falls asleep. Just hear his snores. His snores is a commentary, even though he doesn't snore.
Yeah. You still have to see King Kong Lives because it is a very similar scene to this. You still had to do Monkey Monday.
I mean, it's Monday. This is Monkey Monday.
I suppose so. Yeah. Not the Monkey Monday we need, but the Monkey Monday we deserve.
I am glad I'm like revisiting this. I like the other day I was kind of like on a kind of MonsterVerse kind of brain rot binge, just like looking up scenes and stuff. Lots of Godzilla vs Kong, I guess I would just kind of solidify it as my favorite MonsterVerse movie. But going back to this too, it's like, damn, this is a really just good monster film. In terms of like the last decade, we did get some great ones, especially Legendary. I think Pacific Rim is probably still the best one.
It's the best.
But
It's the best modern MonsterVerse, not MonsterVerse film.
no, like like Western monster film.
Just
Yeah,
best
like
monster film.
true. I say Western only because other than like a handful, like Shin Godzilla and stuff, I didn't see a lot of monster movies like outside this. Like people love Colossal. I still need to see Colossal.
I'd rather watch
Rahul loved that.
I'd rather watch Rampage than King of the Monsters.
Yeah, that might be. Because like I thought Rampage was fun enough, but like I don't know, something about it just didn't really care for it after I saw it. I'm like, yeah, that was pretty good, and then never really thought of it again. Even King of the Monsters has some stuff in it that I think is like pretty standout.
Yeah, I'm in the popular opinion on that.
Yeah.
I really don't care.
Yeah, well, like I was saying, right? Like outside of America, I didn't see like a lot of no, Colossal's an American monster movie. I'm saying, but like you know what I mean, right? Like I probably could have seen. There's probably plenty of monster movies that like I missed in the 2010s, but like out of all the ones I've seen, like Pacific Rim is so good.
Pacific Rim Uprising?
No. I will say that I think I did find a bit of a disappointment that like the big one is just a big skull crawler. I thought it would I was hoping it would have like a unique like
I think it
at least
does.
something about it. I mean, it looks different.
I think there is. I think the shape of the. I think it's the arms. The arms are like longer, or like they have like those edges at those on the front of the arms.
I guess, but I guess what I meant was like I thought it would be cool if maybe the small ones that we saw were like a more basal stage, like maybe they got some horns or something. I don't know, something to make it stand out more, other than just an upscaled version.
Yeah, well, I call big one Ramarak.
Can you pause it?
What? No, we can't do that. We're doing the commentary. Well, I guess I'll just be here for now. That one shot. Oh, that's a Jaws shot right there. Didn't realize that was a thing. I guess Dave's doing something right now, so I'll be talking.
I'm back. My dad came home and
Just as I said, Dave was doing something, and then he come back. Up here we go. For some reason, this is what the internet knows. Like, this is the most popular thing about this movie. It's that it's just some random guy's death that they think is funny.
it is pretty hilarious.
I never found it hilarious though.
I do because it is like I think it's just a really clever it is kind of a expectation subversion. But it just the way it's framed, it's just like so sudden. Because when I saw this, like I laughed because when I saw this, I legitimately did think like, oh, he's gonna go out as like some kind of blaze of glory. But
I saw it as tragic. Like that, I thought that was sad. Like he didn't do anything. Like his thing was for nothing. But I guess people found that funny. I didn't.
Well, that's like what is I forget. I know there's a phrase out there, right? It's like, well, like tragedy and comedy are two sides of the same coin. Because that's why it's funny. It's funny because it's tragic. Because in another movie, like like usually the way they build it up, it would have been a big sacrifice. Like it would have like really meant something. But in this one, it didn't. Also, once again, kind of going into the monster. Once again, that kind of greater theme of the monsterverse of the monsters being so untouchable by people that even a gesture like that doesn't mean anything for the giant creatures.
Well, would Kong
So I guess
do the jawbreaker again? 'Cause
see the problem is like 2014's version, it wasn't a jawbreaker, but like that's what everyone's kind of comparing it to, right? Like, oh, he's opening the thing like King Kong does, and that was just too cool.
That moment was like so slow motion for me. I thought he was going to do it, but then he decided to do that. I'm like, yo, oh, this shot.
Yeah. Me too. See, that's the funny thing. Like, the monster man, it's kind of ironic that like the monster, like Godzilla 2014, has the greatest monster kill perhaps in any movie ever. I like the showing Kong's ingenuity here. You know, as much as I praise this movie's pacing, there's something kind of strange about like this sequence where it's like, because I feel like that fight that we saw should have maybe happened early, like the fight at night should have happened earlier. Because it almost feels like oh, round one Kong loses, and it's just like here's round two.
Yeah, and he just goes after the
Yeah, I do think if the movie kind of falls a little bit apart there, where like up to that point, I think it was just almost really well like just put together. Once again, maybe some stuff got lost in the editing room. Who knows? But
I really hope we get to see more tool using from Kong. I don't care if it's just a rip off of Kratos. I want him to like have his own blades of chaos, but they're like the blades are like Godzilla dorsal plates, and he has like chains around him like he does here. Like he already has an axe. Just give him the blades of chaos.
I really like that shot of Brie Larson shooting the flare.
Sometimes I have to remember that that's not the skull part. Is just for decoration. He actually does have eyes, and he just lost them.
Oh, this is so awesome. The spit. Slow mo. They really tear into the skull crawler. It's a vicious battle. Jeez. There goes Brie Larson.
No, not Brie Larson. We don't have
Press F.
Marvel.
I love how it's like Kong's like, oh no, it's a woman. I have to go save her.
Yeah.
That part, that does kind of feel like, yeah, we do like they need to do the Kong bit where he has a thing for like a human woman.
Uppercut him with it.
He is so brutal. Oh, well, these monsters are built different. Godzilla would never. He's also too big. I really hope I'd love to see even with Godzilla and Kong being like cool with each other, I hope when they show up to probably team up in the next movie, I do hope that they kind of have their opposing personalities though. Also, this, jeez, Like,
I was,
god damn.
Jacob told me that there was like something cooler than a jaw break in the movie. So when I saw this, I guess I was disappointed, but I'm not anymore. So
Yeah, I didn't know how they were gonna end it. Like, I was like, it's one of those things where it's like it's almost like lower key. Like, it's not as grandiose as like other MonsterVerse kills, but it's just like like you zoom in on that guts, and it's just so gross in like a cool way.
yeah.
Kind of, I do appreciate that Kong. Like, he saves the one with something like there's no like grand, like big, like goodbye Kong like thing. He's just leaving. He's done. His work is done. Oh, he looks back.
He just
So
he's seen the other movies. He's not gonna fall for it.
he's like, so we could bring him back to the mainland. And Kong's like, absolutely not.
Look at him go! Look at that stature.
I like how he waddles off. I can't believe in this whole movie we didn't talk about how good Kong's like overall design, MonsterVerse design is.
I still prefer GVK, but yeah.
I'm just talking about like just in general, like he does look better in GVK, but like just overall, like how they really modernized him once again in a really cool way, giving him that more like human stature, but still very much a an ape, like a gorilla kind of vibe still. Just really good.
Well, it's not coming from us.
We're almost there, baby. I don't think we're gonna do the end credits, so pretty soon we're probably gonna have to end it. Like, who cares? Like, we already know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. Also, I am like starving. I'm hungry.
And I gotta use the restroom. So yeah, good movie.
Yeah, like in terms of MonsterVerse films, like this and GVK are like on the floor. I'd say this and GVK are like the two like better ones. 2014, it's still good. Uh, uh, I have mixed feelings on King of the Monsters.
Mm-hmm.
I go between real like liking King of the Monsters and not liking King of the Monsters.
Go into that eye again.
Quality stuff. Sauron for a bit.
I do that in my YTP. I'm gonna post.
The best character in the movie gets the best.
I think a couple times I watch this, I did get teary eyed because it is really emotional and like
It's
wholesome.
it's really well done. It's just so good. Probably like once again, probably the best human character in the MonsterVerse.
Yeah. It's really wholesome that she never remarried.
Yeah, it does. It makes the scene less awkward. That was a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Then she was just raising the kid on her
Yeah.
own.
Yeah. But maybe we'll say for the people out there in real life, like getting remarried, that's obviously fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I do specify that because there are some weird people out there who are like, no, like you shouldn't. It's like no, like it's fine.
There he is. Living the good life.
Yep, watching the Cubs.
See, that's where the movie should end. And that's how we should end it.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys for watching. This was a pretty good movie. Nothing else happens in the credits, so thank you all for watching. We're gonna end it here. I'll probably have like an image of where it stops. So
And thanks for having me on your channel.
no problem. I'd always be happy to have you on here. So everyone, take care and have a good night.
Good night.